Today I'm going to walk you through how I started my small 3D printing Etsy business, from the initial idea to packaging and shipping the final product. So about 6 months ago I got my first 3D printer and I started experimenting with printing and painting models from some of my favourite TV shows like Lord of the Rings and The Mandalorian. I've seen a lot of people selling their 3D prints online, mainly on Etsy and eBay, but most of these products were parts for cars and other useful but boring things. I wanted something for a smaller, more niche audience. That's when I looked into video games, and specifically Red Dead Redemption 2. Known for its rich storytelling and immersive experience, this game creates a strong connection between fans and Arthur Morgan, not just through his personality and struggles, but also through the small details that made him feel so real. One of those details is his hat, a symbol of his journey and character. Consider this model a tribute to one of the most beloved protagonists in gaming. So as for the modeling process, I'm going to be using Blender. I am following a video that I found online, which I'll show on screen now. It isn't going to look exactly like the video in the end, because obviously I'm trying to get it to look like Arthur Morgan's hat instead of just any other cowboy hat. But yeah, this is basically the modeling process. It's not too complicated, as you can see. You've got the video to follow if you're also wanting to make it, but the only differences that I have done is filling in the bottom and also making the brim of the hat a bit thicker, which you'll see later in the modeling process. That is just because when you're 3D printing, you need it to stick to the build plate, and if I did it as thin as the video shows, it will just fall off or it just won't stick at all. You can see here I'm just tweaking the model to get it into a cowboy hat shape, and then I'm going to apply a subdivision modifier to smooth out the surface. As I said earlier, now we're on the brim of the hat, I'm adding a solidify modifier, and then I'm just extending it to make it pretty thick so it sticks to the build plate. As this is going to be a keychain, I'm just adding a hole where the keychain's going to go, and after we've done that, the model is complete, and this is what we're left with. So after importing the model into Bambu Studio, I've just set the size to 30% and duplicated it 4 times because I like to print in 4s. And basically, once you confirm everything's correct, like where you're printing and what it's printing on, you can press Slice Plate, which then shows all the layers of the print. And if you're happy with how long it's going to take and everything, you press Print Plate, and it shows how much filament it's going to use, how long it's going to take, and then you just press Send. Okay, so once they have finished printing off, this is what they look like. You can see there's a few layer lines at the top, which we're now going to get rid of by sanding. Possibly the most boring part of the whole making process, because it is just sanding, just going out the top until those layer lines are smoothed out. So once again, I have sped this up because it is pretty boring, but as you can see, I'm just gonna sand each one until the layer lines are gone and it's a smooth surface at the top. There are still layer lines around the other parts of the model. However, once you've painted, those kind of get hidden by the paint. It is just the top ones where it is quite noticeable, and if you did paint them, you'll still be able to see the layer lines. But as you can see, after a bit of sanding, it's all smoothed out. So I just repeat this process for all 8. I tend to do it in batches of 8, because when I take them off the build plate, I like to turn up the sides a little bit so it's not completely flat. If I had more, they would dry before I'd be able to do that. And once they've been sanded, and as you can see the surface is all smooth, we're going to go in with some paint. So first layer, we're going to be using Lamp Black by Fantastory. And I'm just going to be using a round 14 brush to paint. So there are going to be 3 layers of painting we're going to be doing. So for the initial base layer, I'm just going with black because we are going to be painting over this. So by the end, you're not really going to be able to see the black as much. I do apologize. I am not wearing any gloves or anything, so I'm sorry if it triggers you that I'm gonna get black paint all over my hands. But yeah, we're basically just doing a nice clean layer of black over that grey filament, so then we have something to work off of for the next 2 layers. Also, you might be wondering why I haven't primed the models after sanding them. It's mainly because black already sticks to the surface pretty well, and we're going to be putting on a sealer at the end anyway, so there's not really any need for the primer. For bigger models though, I definitely would recommend it. For the second layer, we're going to be using raw umber, and we're going to be dry brushing. So I've also got some tissue here, which you'll see in a moment. I'm going to basically put some paint on the brush, and then I'm going to get most of it off with the tissue, because that will allow me to paint the model while also keeping some of the first layer visible, instead of just doing a full second coat in brown. So for this process, we're just very lightly going over the model, not trying to coat it in this new color, but rather keep some of the first layer visible and merge the two colors together. Dry brushing, I think, gives a really nice effect. We're going to be dry brushing for the third layer as well for some highlights. It is just such a good way to get a really nice texture of what you're trying to mimic. For the third layer, we're going to be using raw sienna, and we're just going to be dry brushing again, but this layer is really what brings it all together. As you'll see in a moment, currently it looks a little bit too dark, but by using the raw sienna, we kind of create highlights as well as create the actual color of the hat. If we have a look at Arthur Morgan's hat, you can see in the picture it does look a little bit darker compared to what we're going to be doing. For realism purposes, yes, you would keep it kind of at the stage it is now, but personally I think it does look a little bit better with this third layer because it just makes the hat stand out a bit more. And now, using my sealer and some pigeon line, I'm just going to hang the hats up and spray them to hold the paint in place. And then we're just going to stain some string, which is going to be used for the rope around Arthur Morgan's hat. So with the string all stained now, and the hats having a matte finish over them due to the sealer, we are going to create the lasso band of the hat. So I've cut a little bit of string here, which I'm going to fold over twice. And then by following this post I found online, I am going to create the band around his hat. I do apologise that I'm going a bit off camera here. It's quite hard to tie knots and keep it in focus at the same time. Here I'm just using some scissors to cut off the excess string and then some super glue to hold the band in place. So at this point the hat is actually done, and now we're going to be applying the keychain to it. And we're just going to hook it under the little hole we have made in the model. And also use some pliers to lock it in place. I also put the hat in this little bag because I think it adds a really nice touch, which is vital for an Etsy business. And I also write a little quote from Arthur Morgan. I think these little gestures are what really make an Etsy business stand out. People expect this kind of care taken when they buy something from a smaller business, so it's really important to add these little touches. So now we're ready to package the product. I'm just using this bubbled envelope, and this is how it's going to be shipped. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know in the comments if you had any questions. I know I didn't cover too much on the Etsy side and more on how to come up with an idea and create it. So yeah, just let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.